All right. So, Elisa, the first question that I would like to ask you is if someone said to you, what are your thoughts about climate change? Just off the top of your head, what would you say?
So probably off the top of my head, I would say that climate change is obviously a very critical and urgent issue. I think it requires immediate attention, but I feel like it just definitely isn't discussed enough every day in life or like to the youth. So I
Right.
think it kind of needs like collective action because climate change is like obviously happening because of all the human activities like worldwide, not just in one spot, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. That's totally valid. And the second question that I have for you is knowing a bit about climate change from your experience and what you have heard in the news and learned in the classroom, how do you feel about the future of climate change and what it predicts?
Honestly, I think of right now, I think the future with climate change predicts something quite bleak and it should be like very concerning. Like even
Right.
I just read something in the news about like in Antarctica, there was a study, and since global temperatures are rising and the sea ice is melting, researchers found that like flowers were actually blooming in Antarctica, which is probably not the best thing going on,
Wow.
which I was very shocked. Like usually it's a good thing, the flowers blooming, but
Right.
definitely not with that. So I think like it depends significantly on like our global efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and like adapt to new changes and maybe transition to like sustainable practices. Otherwise,
Right.
it will not be great.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds really shocking. Do you know exactly why the Antarctic flower blooming incident is hazardous? Like what's the problem with that?
Well, it just has just because like it's supposed to be so cold up there that only like I guess little mosses are supposed to
Right.
grow. But since that it's getting so warm, no, okay, it's not like hot up there, but like since it's getting so much warmer that
Right,
these
right,
flowers are actually able to grow and like
right.
way more quickly and more densely, which is something we've
Mm,
never seen before. So it
I see what
really
you mean. Yeah, it's like an indication of a complete lack of balance. Everything is out of order.
exactly not supposed to happen, and it's like that's like such
Yeah,
a yeah
bizarre circum.
bizarre.
Yeah, it's kind of poetic actually in a way, the way that
Oh
flowers
yeah, it
blooming,
is.
and
And it's
it's
such evidence like showing that these
yeah,
things are real for those people who don't think they're real.
exactly, exactly. There we go. And my third question for you is how have you and the people you know have been handling the feelings that come up when you think about the future, the impacts of climate change, things like that, and the kind of problems that are likely to bring about?
If I'm being honest, it's not a topic that I hear discussed often. And I think that really just stems from like the fact that our generation feels so much like concern, like a mix of concern, anxiety, and frustration when it comes to the topic. So
Right,
like the easiest thing to do when you're nervous about something, right, is to push it to the back of your mind and not deal with it.
right.
But like it can have such a huge impact on our planet and future generations. So it probably just seems like an overwhelming problem. For myself, like I try to continuously like educate myself on the topic because it makes me feel calmer. Because like when you know something, then there's not much fear behind it,
100%. Yeah, 100%. I completely agree.
right? Exactly. No, with anything, not even this, but like with anything, if you know something about it, you're usually less scared of the facts or whatever. So like I kind of encourage my friends to do the same, and like when it does come up, to do that because like it just alleviates a bit of the fear and anxiety, and then maybe you can figure out little things that you can do to help or to prevent.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a really good point. I completely share that sentiment. I feel like when you have an understanding of what the consequences are, what the like problems are, it's so much more relieving. It's so much more easy to navigate it without being like
100.
overwhelmed with not knowing what to do and also just the feeling of being burdened by something that you know is going wrong.
100%. Like with anything, even like an assignment in school, when the
Yeah.
professor's talking about it, I get all nervous. But then when I open up the doc, like the PDF, like, oh, okay, I understand this or that, then it makes it feel better instead of that unknown.
Yes, I 100% agree. And that brings me to my fourth question, which is who and or what forces have resulted in our being subject to the impacts of climate change?
Um, I think the biggest forces that have been resulted in are subject to the impacts of climate change, especially in our generation. Or I'm not sure how old you are, but you look young. So like in our generation, one would be like fast fashion,
Mm,
definitely inefficient transportation. Because like even going to school, like everyone just drives their own car when
right,
you should be.
right.
Taking public transport or carpooling or something. Single-use plastics for sure, like at the food courts or anything. I think fast fashion though is a really big one. It's like grown so much in popularity over the
That's
years, and like
true.
why would you go to Aritzia and pay $100 for a t-shirt when you can get 15 t-shirts from one of those
Value Village.
websites?
Yeah.
Value Village, exactly, anything like that, right? So, um, but yeah, what else did I put down here? Oh, I think also like companies involved in like the burning of big fossil fuels have a huge contribution to climate change. Like even just now, I'm not sure where you live, but I live in Burnaby
Yeah.
and there's like this terrible smell a week
Oh, I heard
ago.
about that. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like that, and like there's flames coming out of the factory. And it's like you're just
Yeah.
thinking like this is just one factory in like a small city like in Burnaby. So imagine what's going on around the world.
Yeah, it's crazy. I live in Coquitlam, but I heard about
Okay.
I work in Burnaby, so I know exactly what you mean. It's insane.
Yeah, okay, so same area. So you know, so yeah, that thing, it's always on. Like you can see like little flames coming out from it, usually from the pipes or whatever, but like it was like on fire.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very scary, very scary.
Right.
Um, the fifth question is, what can be done about climate change as you see it?
Well, for most of us, we don't have control over those big companies or the government or anything, but I think like even really small things can be done to like help alleviate the issue. Like even just like simple things like shutting off the lights when you leave the room, not using excessive water, trying not to use so many single plastics. I know that like grocery stores are now implementing like only paper bags or bring your own, which I think is really, really good. And
Mhm.
definitely recycling properly. I have firsthand experience like at school. I don't know if people just aren't looking or paying attention. They do have the different bins, but people just throw things in the garbage
Right.
instead of recycling or something, which I think would, help. Um, even like trying to use a more fuel efficient car or carpooling to school or to work, I think is really important. I know some businesses are trying to encourage people to do that by giving like free parking spaces to those who
Mm,
carpool, and the rest of the
mhm.
people have to like park far away from the building or something. So I think that's
Yeah.
a really good initiative by businesses, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a collective issue. So even like little things would help.
Yes, I think that's actually a very good point, how you talk a lot about the collectiveness of it. It's so important to work everyone together and do even a small part or a big part, and it adds up. It totally adds up.
It totally, like even when you think like, oh, I'm one person, I can't do anything. But if everybody does a little
Yeah,
something.
yeah. If everyone's on the same page, it definitely helps. I think that's a really good point, collectivity. And now we're going to shift gears a little bit and do some other more intricate questions. One of them being, in looking at climate change so far, what ideas, projects, or approaches have you heard about that have invited you to feel the most curious or optimistic?
I think the main one, I don't know why this was such a shock for me, but I really think that electric vehicles are making me feel like pretty optimistic just
Okay,
because it's such a promising solution to reduce carbon emissions. Like,
right.
and now people are trying to develop like more affordable and longer range electric vehicles, which would entice people even more. Like, even a personal example, like my dad was like so against electric vehicles, he has to drive really far for work.
Yeah,
And it was just like I can't have that. I don't want to be stopping every 2 hours to charge my car. And what if I get stuck in the snow somewhere, right? But
yeah.
now that they have been like making these improvements and everything, like
Mhm.
our next car is going to be electric. He already said that. So I thought that was pretty interesting because he usually doesn't change his mind. So that can say a lot about other people as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Upgrading the technology.
Right? So much upgrading technology. I
Good.
also think I read some studies, I can't remember where, but like about projects involving like reforestation and conservation efforts of like marine habitats. And I think that's great ways of like restoring the ecosystems and preserving the environment and contributing to climate resilience.
Mm.
Like I think that'll be a good start to bring things back to how they were, maybe not exactly how they were before we were here, but at least help reduce the carbon footprint that we have left
Right,
on Earth.
right. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. I like that. And what kind of things could universities, communities, and businesses do that would be actually helpful to young people specifically in responding to the impacts of climate change?
For young people, for sure. I think like universities could do a lot to help students become more educated on the matter, and like maybe more if it was just a part of everyday life, like not even big things, but just like constant reminders. Because I feel like I said before, like it kind of slips the minds of a lot of people, and then you realize, oh my God, there's flowers blooming in Antarctica. Like something's really, really wrong. Like, for example, it could be through like climate change, like education programs, or just like mentioned in classes, or maybe posters, or because like if we're young people, especially if we're not continuously reminded of something,
Mm.
it what do they say, like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. That's so true.
So I think that should definitely be something. Like I don't know if it's people are in a rush or they just don't care, but like I said before, putting garbage or recycling in garbage bins, or just even little things like that.
Right.
Like I think it was taught at a young age. I
Yeah.
remember it being like grade 1 or 2, but then after that, it kind of stopped everything about Earth and like Earth Day and like climate
Yeah.
change.
That's actually true. That's a good point. Yeah, I remember I don't think we're too far in terms of generational gap. And I remember
I'm
like
22. I'm
I'm
22 right now.
26, so
Okay,
it's
same
really
thing.
close.
Same, it was
Yeah.
the same thing.
And yeah, I remember there were a lot of efforts, like a lot of campaigning in schools and stuff to do a lot of like the 3 R's were a big thing.
Yes, the
Reduce,
three. Oh
recycle. Yeah.
my God.
Yeah. And yeah, there were a lot of things, but it kind of faded out. You're right. Yeah, once I got into like high school, for example, like I think in the past maybe 15 years, it fizzled out of the school base and it
Yeah,
kind
the
of just went
curriculum.
into like it became a trend almost. So instead of it being this like, you know, public school thing, it's just like
Yeah,
companies go green and that's like the cool thing to do. It's a
exactly. No,
greenwash.
you're right. A trend. That's a good way of putting it. Definitely. Maybe we need more trends. That's a good.
Yeah. What do you think about slow living? Now that you mention things that are a little bit like, how people are really fast paced and they forget about things and they're really in a rush. Have you ever heard about the slow living lifestyle?
Like more, I mean, I feel like they always say that North America, maybe not in California, but the rest is like really fast-paced living,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is why we don't stop and think about these things.
Yeah.
And like when I was in Europe, it definitely was the slow living. Like I
Yeah.
was very uncomfortable with how different it was. Very nice, like very,
Yeah.
very nice. And it's
Yeah.
funny you mentioned that actually, because in Europe, I did notice that they do put a lot more emphasis on that. Like even I was renting an apartment, and like the landlord must have told me about 3 times, like, here's the green bin, like don't put that in the garbage. The
Yeah.
recycling you take to this place right here. And they have like you bring all your stuff. They're around the city. It's outside. They're like big cans that like go into the ground into these massive boxes. I've never seen anything like this. And you bring like recycling, your paper, like everything like that to this outside area, and then you just shove it down these holes, and like different trucks come and collect each one. And people are
Okay.
happy to do it. So I
Interesting.
definitely think that I guess maybe they have more time, or like I don't know, this slow
Yeah.
concept. So it's definitely a bit more emphasized over there to do the right
Yeah.
thing.
That's interesting. Yeah, like the cultural contrast. I know Europe has a way different like mode of operation and they take things a little bit more relaxed.
People are having coffee at like 11 a.m. instead of at work. Like, I don't, or maybe they are working doing that. I don't know, but it seems to work.
Yeah, I know it seems to work. Like things don't look like they're, falling apart.
No, they don't. Everything's good over there. Things are
Yeah.
falling apart here. So
Yeah. There we go. There we go. Okay, well, that brings the interview to a close. That was
Um,
pretty efficient. 20 minutes, maybe even
I,
less.
I hope I helped with something.
Yeah, you definitely did. Thank you so, so much, Elisa. I know,
Oh,
Arden and Mary are gonna be really happy that you participated and took the time. And that's actually a really, really, really considerate thing of you to do, to take the time and just answer a couple questions for us. And
thank
yeah, if you have any other questions or you want to add anything else, let me know. You can email me. You can send me a little excerpt or link or
thank
something
you. I'm
interesting.
happy I could help. You've been
Yeah.
so awesome. Thank you. I see why they love you there.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna stop recording.